Hi, this is the NewBeeDrone Infinity stack, and today we are going to talk about power delivery to the DJI Air Unit. Alright, most of you guys know that the DJI FPV system Air Unit will only take up to 4S. I don't know why they did not go straight up to 6S from the get-go. I think they possibly were just too involved in the development of the system that they didn't see the fact that everybody's moving up to 5 and 6S and most pilots are abandoning 4S. That may be the case. Also, it might have something to do with heat, given that the higher the voltage they have to regulate, the more heat it develops. I haven't flown this yet. I've flown my buddy Levi's system, but from what I hear, it gets really hot. I'll tell you what now though, when V2 comes out, who knows, in a year from now, I think that's the first thing we're going to see is air units that support up to 6S, because that is definitely the trend these days. It's one of the main complaints I would say about the DJI system, the fact that it only goes up to 4S. So a couple of companies have come up with different ideas of how to solve this problem. I come from started flying like 5 years ago, and back then we had to individually regulate everything. I had a step down regulator that went for the camera to make it 12 volt. I had another step down regulator that would do 5 volt for the NACE 32 at the time. So I'm very used to using little buck sort of regulators for different power requirements within my drone, within my quads. However, these days everybody's spoiled. They have everything within the ESC, within the flight controller. They have 9 volt, 10 volt, 12 volt, different amp ratings for whatever they need to do. So very few of the pilots that have been flying within the last 2 years are actually using separate regulators. So when I decided to build my first DJI unit quad, I was like, well, I'll just probably use an external regulator. However, I decided against it too because I also like to make things easier. The last quad that I built with an independent regulator for, I believe it was a KISS CC, and I needed a regulator for my VTX. That didn't turn out right. I think there was a problem with the regulator. It got me really frustrated, so I didn't even want to think about that. So I decided, you know what, I'm just going to go with something that seems, or is proven actually at this point. So what's happened is a number of different companies have built flight controllers meant to supply the amperage and voltage needed for the DJI Air Unit. Some of these companies include iFlight, T-Motor has done it, I'm sure a couple others have done it as well, and then in this case we have the NewBeeDrone one. Now let me point out, I used to be sponsored by NewBeeDrone. I decided to go independent. I bought this with my own money because I believe in it. I did not get it for free. And so I can tell you that the only reason I spent the money on this is because I believe that it works. And I believe that it works because I saw the development. See, my buddy Leviathan, who is the team manager for NewBeeDrone, he was one of the first guys to get the DJI system, and he helped develop this thing. Of course, it went through a lot of revisions, trial and error. A couple of things worked, a couple of things didn't, and by now at this point we have a very solid system. The first couple of boards, I remember they were soldering some components on to make different tests, and finally they got a system that actually is really solid. And the reason is I've seen Levi fly his for months since the DJI system came out, and it's been super solid on 6S, and I decided, you know, this is the way to go. Right. If you guys that follow my channel, you know that I prefer Flight 1 and I prefer KISS whenever possible. I feel they fly better. Yes, I can make a Betaflight quad fly just as well, but it takes a whole lot more work. And I've always gravitated towards KISS, and in recent 2 years also to Flight 1. So of course I wanted to build a DJI quad with one of those systems, but Falco X right now, I don't even know how they're dealing with the whole OSD only system to work with DJI, so I didn't even think of that one. And KISS, I know some guys have built the DJI quads with KISS, but it feels like the progression goes from Betaflight, and then Alexander Fedorov, who does the development for KISS, OSD and whatnot, he's been adapting the system to work with KISS, and I'm sure it's great. I'm sure I'll probably do it for my second DJI build. But for now, I just wanted to go with the simplest one that I know it's proven and I know works, so that's going to be Betaflight. A couple of months ago, when Levi first showed me that they were developing this, we talked about the price, and we talked about the components that went especially into this ESC. And the first thing that came out is it's expensive. And the reason for it is, you know, a lot of these manufacturers are making components to a price point, because in this hobby, there's a lot of people that are always penny pinching, and it's understandable. However, because of past experience in ESCs and FCs and whatnot, it was certain that at that point in time, NewBeeDrone was definitely going for a, you know what, we're just going to go with the best components possible, whatever with the price. So they ended up with this ESC, which is not cheap, but it has the best components that you can get right now. I think this whole stack is $100, but that's on sale, so you gotta keep that in mind. It is definitely up there with the other expensive high-end quality ESCs and FCs on the market. And I believe in that. I mean, when it comes to a 4-in-1, I like to run the best thing I can possibly get my hands on, and the fact it's because I don't have a lot of time, so I don't have time to be burning ESCs, and then you almost have to take apart a whole quad to replace a 4-in-1. One reason why I like individual ESCs. So when I run a 4-in-1, I want to run the best thing possible, something that'll last. This Infinity ESC basically features a lot of capacitors. And looking at the specs online, let's see what we got here. Looking here on the website, they say that it has 10 microfarad capacitors, 48 of them, which equals 480 microfarads of capacitance. Which they also tell you that you do not have to run an external capacitor with this, and I'm sure that's true. 480 microfarads is quite enough. Am I gonna run an external capacitor? You bet. I believe more is better, and I like to run at least close to 1,000 or more when possible, especially if I'm gonna run this on 6S. Levi's not gonna agree with me. The guys at NewBeeDrone are gonna go like, you don't need it, whatever. But while I'm building it, I might as well go ahead and add the extra capacitor. Again, they're not gonna agree with me. But you know, if you decide not to run it, I'm sure it'll be fine as well. The FC. The one thing I love about this thing is that it has a flat bottom. So a lot like the Pyro F4, it has a flat bottom, and that makes it so you can get the stack really close together and makes for a really, really clean flight controller. Really like how this looks. Looks really good. And let's talk about the power delivery now. So the Air Unit. If you look on DJI's website, it says that it needs between 7.4 and 17.6 volts. And that's with the power consumption of 4 to 9 watts. Now, we don't use watts very often when it comes to calculating how much amperage or how much power our components need based on cameras and VTXs. We usually use amperage only, and that's because we run on a voltage level which is pretty fixed. If you know, to get wattage, you multiply voltage times amps. So if you look at the flight controller here, it says that it supplies up to 19 watts, I'm going to say. Looking on here, I have visitors downstairs, so you're going to hear people talking down there. Okay, so it says it actually supplies 18 watts, and that's at 9 volts. That's 2 amps. So 9 times 2 is 18. So basically 9 volts times 2 amps, you end up with 18 watts. That is quite a bit of overhead, given that the DJI system says it needs up to 9 watts. And that's, of course, 4 to 9 watts, depending on what voltage you run, because it can do from 2S up to 4S, which is around 17.6 volts. When it's fully charged, it's actually 16.8, but it has a little bit of overhead just so it doesn't burn off if there's a spike or if you overcharge a little bit, I guess. But having overhead is really good. So this says it has twice as much wattage as it needs to supply the DJI system, and you always want to run a regulator with quite a bit of headroom, you would say, not overhead, headroom, because when they get hot, they don't supply as much wattage or amperage as they are rated for. So having the little bit extra headroom allows that if there's a drop in power delivery because of heat or whatever, you won't brown out the system. So having that headroom is really good. So 5S or 6S, not a problem. It gets regulated and you get the amount of power that you need for the DJI system. I think eventually they will supply an Air Unit when they come up along with the next hardware revision, maybe in a year or whatever, and we won't have to be dealing with this, but in the meantime it's a good thing to have. Not only that, 9 volts is really good to power a certain number of VTXs, so if you're not running a DJI system, you could still power a VTX, an analog VTX like a TBS at 9 volts. It will be an HV, and in fact there's other power distribution boards on the market that are meant to power TBS Unify high volts at 9 volts, so that's very normal, and you'll have plenty of headroom with 18 watts and 2 amps for it. So that's good. This is all gonna go in an Impulse RC Apex. A lot of you guys know that I fly mainly hyperlow. I fly Flight Club racing frames, and then I've always had some kind of Impulse RC frame in my fleet. I've always loved the brand. I love what they do. I love their innovation. So naturally, I decided to give their frame a shot for the DJI system. So it's almost already started. I should be finishing it soon. Keep an eye on the channel because I'll have a full video with this build and my experiences running the system for the first time. I know I'm a little bit late to the hype train for DJI. I really was skeptical at first and I waited a couple months. When they released their last update, which improves the latency, that kind of like tipped me to finally convert. And not convert, I'm still gonna fly a lot of analog, but I mean like actually like get the system run it on a couple of quads. So yeah, watch out for that because it's coming soon. In the meantime, if you are considering DJI and need a solid flight controller to power it, and even if you're not going to run DJI and you want to run a solid flight controller and ESC stacked, even to run a TBS Unify or something of sorts, this is a good option as far as Betaflight goes. I know that NewBeeDrone pulled all the stops when it came to building a proper, very good high-end componentry here, and I know this is gonna be a good stack for a good amount of time. Alright guys, this comes with very nice cases. It comes with all the wires that you need to wire it. This is one of them, the other one's over here. It comes with various options to connect the Air Unit, and of course you could repin these or cut them if you're gonna run some other system. Also, I'm gonna run Crossfire, so I'm not gonna use the DJI controller, so I'm gonna have to cut some of these wires anyway so I can wired it a little bit differently. If you are gonna run the DJI controller, there's no solder. You just connect the plug into the Air Unit, and that basically runs the entire radio and video. And then yeah, you have to wire for the motors and soldering for that and whatnot. But at least when it comes to video and control, you don't have to do any soldering. Just plug it in and good to go. That is just encouraging people that don't like to solder. By the way, you guys that have been following my channel know that I prefer soldering everything if I possibly can, and if I can avoid plugs altogether, I will. Okay, again, subscribe. You don't want to miss the next video about this topic. Thumbs up to this video. Every thumbs up I get helps it get shared and more people see it. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one, guys. Stay tuned. More coming.